From analog.
Hi, Jim. You've a great signal up here. You're 5.9 plus.
You're digital.
We are everywhere you want to be. This is the CQ Blind Hams Podcast.
Welcome to the June edition of the CQ Blind Hams Tech Zoom. This is a monthly meeting that takes place on Zoom to get into more in-depth discussions, if you will, about ham-related tech type topics from a blindness perspective. If you want to learn more about blind hams and all the other ways to get into the network and how to learn about the podcasts and even how to mute yourself before coughing, you can go to www.blindhams.com, www.blindhams.com. A lot of good stuff on that website. You can also find us on YouTube, because every one of these meetings is recorded and turned into a podcast, and it is uploaded to YouTube, as well as your favorite podcast catcher out there, Apple Music, Madam A, devices, Google Homes, everything, just about, Victor Streams, you name it. Search for CQ Blind Hams, and you can listen to this and many other informative podcasts. So, as was mentioned before, this meeting is being recorded, and normally that entails having to interact with a screen that makes you choose something that says "Got it" before it lets you have access to meeting controls, but it's because it's being recorded in a different way. That's not an issue today, thankfully. So, if you don't want to be heard on this recording that will be distributed as podcast, then I guess the thing to do is to stay muted permanently. But we hope you don't do that, because we like to have input and questions from everybody who's here. So at this point, if you're not presenting or hosting in any shape or form, go ahead and mute yourself, please, and remain muted until we open it for questions. And when we do take questions, the way it works is you're either going to raise your hand or speak up, and you're in either way, you wait to be acknowledged before you start speaking, so we don't speak over each other. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the rest of the crew here of co-hosts. We have Joel, W0CAS. Anything you want to say, Joel? All right. Now, if you could do that in CW.
It's all quiet.
Yeah. So maybe Joel's not hearing us at the moment. So we'll go to Robert, NC5R. Any words tonight?
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm so glad you all are here. We always enjoy bringing these tech Zooms, and this promises to be a very interesting one. And I just want to say welcome, and everybody sit back and enjoy, and feel free to ask questions when that time comes. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you. And Steve, WB2KTV.
I'm here. Nice to see a good crew. And I promise I won't cough in an inappropriate spot again. And I do have a question right off the bat. You mentioned that there's supposed to be a got it button to acknowledge the recording. Is there any circumstance where we would not see one? Because I don't have one. And I also didn't hear the little voice say this meeting is being recorded.
You will not see one tonight, because I'm recording using a different recording app called Audio Hijack, so you don't have to worry about it this evening.
Oh, okay. Then everything's cool.
Yep. And let's see if Joel has managed to come back.
Yeah, I had my button muted. I was welcome everyone to the June Tech Zoom, and thank everybody for showing up and participating. It's going to be a great night.
Awesome. Yeah, it is. It's going to be a really neat thing, because I've heard of this NANO VNA thing being discussed on mail lists and on the air. And the first time I heard about it, it's like, what the heck is that? So I'm glad that it is the topic for tonight, because I will certainly be right along with the rest of you learning. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see if our guest speaker is here tonight. Don, Uh, oh wait.
How about WA2IWC?
Yeah. There you go. Before I do it, I always forget to introduce myself as well. I put myself at the bottom of the list here. So I'm Julian, N1CA, live in Southern California. So go ahead, Don, take it away.
All right, I'm Don, WA2IWC. Some of you probably heard me on Blind Hams here and there. And I'm in New York City. And I was asked to give a little talk about the NANO VNA antenna analyzer. It's probably Gina that should be doing this because she's done a lot more than I have. But I have used it quite successfully a number of times. Unfortunately, the demo that I really wanted to do tonight that would really, I think, bring the points home better, I really can't do because my low band antenna is non-functional. And while you might think that that would be the best time to pull out an antenna analyzer, in this case, it's not, because you know what? An open circuit is an open circuit, no matter where you sweep, how you sweep, and how many buttons you click. your result is pretty much the same all over the place. So it was kind of useless. So I worked up a little bit of a demo using my VHF UHF Comet V3, which is up on my roof about 85 feet above the ground. So the NANO VNA is going through about 140 feet of coax, but that doesn't seem to bother it. So that's good. What is a NANO VNA? It's a little device you can hold in just about the palm of your hand. They usually have a tiny little screen on them for those who seem to want screens. None of us, I'm sure. And it's good because even people that can see them really well, they're very hard to utilize because the screen is very small and there's a lot of information. So the one I have is very bare bones. They range from about 50 or 60 bucks all the way up to maybe 150. The more expensive ones, some of them have bigger displays built in and they come in nice cases and so forth, but really you don't have to spend a lot of money on one. The big difference between them that you do want to pay attention to is the frequency coverage. The cheapest ones go up to about 330 megahertz. The more expensive ones, maybe instead of spending 50 bucks, you spend 80 or 90, they'll go up to about at least 3 gigs. So we got echo coming back from somebody that needs to be muted. So anyway, I recommend the more expensive one because then you can pretty much sweep any antenna that you're likely to encounter in your lifetime. And it's not that much of a difference in money. So usually
Don, you know, pause for a second. Is that it, Angelo? Are you you got your mic on?
I think it was Rob.
Oh, Rob. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I sometimes if Angelo's got his on real quick, he's got speakers on.
Yeah.
So
all right. In any case, I recommend the more expensive one, 80 or 90 bucks, because like I said, you'll be able to check any antenna you're likely to encounter in your lifetime, from rubber ducks to beams to dipoles to loops to half-wave end feds, whatever you want to play with. You can do more than just check antennas with an antenna analyzer. The NANO VNA is also capable of checking filters. So like a bandpass filter, you could do a sweep of the bandpass filter to look at its performance. I don't have any to play with, so I can't really demonstrate that, or else I probably would have. But you can do a lot with them. They usually plugs into your computer with a USB cable, and it gets its power from there. The software, a sighted person can use the Nano VNA on its own by looking at its little tiny screen. It doesn't show normally the information on the computer screen unless you use other software. Gina, for example, has used Nano VNA Saver, which is a program that runs on the PC, and that does take the data and put it up on the screen. The software that I'm going to show you is a lot simpler. Doesn't show you as much, although the developer is working on exposing more. But it shows, what it does show you is very nicely accessible and easy to deal with and easy to use and easy to make sense of. So that's kind of a brief description of the Nano VNA. It's usually, I guess, probably a Pi or something. And that's basically it. So the Bruce McKinnon KC1 FSD was asked a little over a year ago by Frank Ventura, N1FMV, who does get on blind hams once in a great while, but you don't hear him too much. He asked Bruce, would he consider trying to make the Nano VNA accessible? And Bruce took it on with a vengeance, and I think he did a beautiful job. He wrote a little piece of software called Nano VNA Controller, and what that does is link up with the Nano VNA that's plugged into your PC via a USB to serial connection. So the Nano VNA, when you plug it in, creates a virtual COM port. So Bruce's software links up with that COM port, which it finds automatically, very, very nice, and provides you a way to get into the Nano VNA with a browser. So you can use any browser except probably Internet Explorer. I usually use Chrome or Microsoft Edge, and both of them work very well. When you get your Nano VNA, by the way, one part of the description I left out is there's two connectors, SMA connectors on the Nano VNA. And one, I guess you would consider the input, and the other one you'd consider the output. But usually, if you're dealing with antennas, you use the one connector. Usually, if the screen is facing you from the Nano VNA, it's usually on the left. If you were going to sweep a filter, that's when you would use both connectors, for example, because you'd make a kind of a loop. So, but in the box also comes three little SMA connectors that can screw on to the SMA connector on the left of the Nano. And one is an open circuit, one is a short circuit, and one is a 50 ohm load. And before you can use the antenna analyzer, you have to calibrate it. So in the Nano VNA controller software, and in any other piece of software that's going to talk to a Nano VNA, there'll be a calibration section. And when you click on that, it will ask you to put in like a starting frequency and an ending frequency. So you've got to calibrate it for each sweep that you do, which is kind of a pain in the neck, but that's just the way it is. So when you put in the starting frequency and the ending frequency, then you click begin calibration. It asks you, it asks you first to put in the open circuit, then and hit enter, and then it tells you to put in the short circuit and hit enter, and then it tells you to put in the load and hit enter. And once you've done that, you hit enter again to restart. And now you can go on and start to do sweeps. So, of course, you're going to hopefully sweep the same frequency range you calibrated. I actually screwed that up when I did this demo, so the results are a little bit different than you would expect, but they're good enough to get the point across, so I left it. The reason I can't do this live is because I live in a studio apartment and I don't have the space to lay this stuff out on a bench and make it practical to juggle all of this with just two hands. So what I did was I saved the results of my sweeps so that I could demonstrate what the antenna analyzer shows you, because that's what's important. So,
meeting controls to move to an item. Leaving menus. NANO meeting controls. NANO not controller Google.
Okay, so now
NANO.
you can do, with Nano VNA controller, you can do what's called a simple sweep. And then you can also do a complex sweep. The simple sweep gives you less information than a complex sweep. But it's always good to start, I think, with a simple sweep, because it gives you pretty much what you really, really want to know right off the bat. If you get some results out of the simple sweep that don't quite make sense to you, then the complex sweep may reveal more of what's going on and make those results from the simple sweep make more sense. So
sweep panel heading level 1.
This is a simple sweep panel, and the results are presented in a table, so it's very accessible.
Table with 19 columns and 2 rows. VSWR sweep results column.
So there you go. So now I'm in a table.
1.01 row 2. Beginning of row. 440.000 row 1.
So I did a sweep from 440 to 448, I think it was, something like that. And when you do a sweep, you put in a starting frequency, just like you did for the calibration. You put in an ending frequency, just like you did for the calibration. But you also put in a step. So you can say, I want a result every 100 kc, every 500 kc, every meg, every 50 kc, every 2 megs. Depends on what you're really looking for to gauge what your antenna's doing on any given frequency. So
1.01 row 2, 440.000
so
row
now
1.
on 440.0,
1.01 row 2.
I've got a 1.01 SWR. If I go to the next block here,
440.522 1.01 column 2.
so 440.522, it's actually should have been 50, but that's all right. I don't know why I miscalculated, messed up something. But anyway,
440.522 1.01 column 2.
it's still 1.01. So I'm going to go to the next,
441.044 1.01 column 3.
and it still looks the same. It is a pretty darn flat antenna. I was amazed at how good it really is.
441.567 1.01 column 4.
And
442.089 1.01 column 5.
see, we keep going up,
442.611 1.01 column 6.
and the SWR seems to be staying flat.
443.133 1.01 column 7. 443.656 1.01 column 8. 444.178 1.01 column 444.700 1.01 column 10. 445.222 1.01 column 11. 445.744 1.01 column 446.267 1.01 column 13. 446.789 1.01 column 14. 447.311 1.01 column 15. 447.833 1.00 column 16.
Ooh.
448.356 1.01 column 17. 448.878 1.01 column 18. 449.400 best match 1.0 best match column 19.
So you see, this antenna is a lousy one to demonstrate because it's really a good performing antenna over the range. But you also noticed on the last result, it said best match. So it tells you where it thinks you have the best match. But if you look at this sweep, you say to yourself,
448.878 1.01 column 449.40 best match 1.0 best match column 19.
Why do I have the best match? Okay, well, one reason is because it's down to 1.00. All right, so it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. That's where your SWR is perfectly flat. But if you want to see, a little more about what the antenna is actually doing and why the readings are the way they are, you can look at the complex sweep.
NANO not controller, heading level 1.
And now, so I switched the complex sweep panel.
Wrapping the top complex sweep panel, heading level 1.
All right.
Table with 10 columns and 4 rows. Complex sweep result, column 1, row 1. VSWR, row 2. Real Z, row 3. VSWR, row blank, row 1. 404 blank, column 1. 440.000, column 2. VSWR 1.02, row 2.
So now you see this is the same as in the simple sweep, but we have more rows added here. So I'm going to go down.
Real Z 50.10, row 3.
And it says Real Z 50.10.
Imac Z minus 0.82, row 4.
Imagine Imac Z, which is imaginary impedance,
Real Z Imac Z minus 0.82, row 4.
is minus 0.82. So what this tells us here
Real Z VSWR 1.02, row 2.
is our VSWR is 1.02.
Real Z 50.10, row 3.
The antenna impedance is 50.10 ohms at this point, which is why the SWR isn't flat. That's part of the reason. But here's more of the picture.
Imac Z minus 0.82, row 4.
The imagined impedance has a negative value.
Bottom of column. Real Z Imac Z minus 0.82, row 4.
Minus 0.82. That tells you something somewhat significant here. It would make a lot more sense if this was a low band antenna. It would mean more because there's not much you're going to do about it with a VHF, UHF dual band antenna. But what this result is telling you that there's some inductive reactance at this frequency. When you see a minus value in the imagined impedance field, it means there's inductive reactance. Now, when you tune up an antenna, your goal is to have the antenna exhibit nothing but true resistance. There should be no inductive reactance or capacitive reactance if you can manage that. And then you have the perfect antenna at resonance. So we'll go,
Real Z VSWR 1.02,
we'll
row 2.
go to the next.
441.113, 1.01, column 3.
And then now we're up to 1.01 SWR.
Real Z 50.08, row 3.
50.08 ohms. So you can see the impedance is changing a little bit.
Imac Z minus 0.70, row 4.
And minus 0.70. So our inductive reactance is a little less.
Real Z VSWR 1.01, row 2. 441.113, row 1.
So we're going to keep going here.
442.225, column 4. VSWR 1.01, row 2.
And we're back to 1.01.
Real Z 50.18, row 3.
50.18 ohms.
Imac Z minus 0.62, row 4.
And minus 0.62. So our inductive reactance is creeping up again.
Real Z VSWR 1.01, row 443.337, column VSWR 1.01, row 2. Real Z 50.27, row 3. Imac Z minus 0.59, row 4.
All right. So you see, these things do change.
Real Z VSWR
And they
1.01, row
make
2.
a difference. Now,
444.450, 1.01, column 6.
I want to get to the best match.
445.562, 1.01, 446.675, 447.78 best match, 1.01 best match, column 9.
All right. So now we have 1.01 best match. Why?
Real Z 50.24, row 3.
The Real Z is 50.24. So maybe if we look at this sweep, we'll find out that it never really gets down to 50 at all, 50.0.
Imac Z 0.01, row 4.
And we have a little tiny bit of inductant
Real Z Imac Z 0.01, row 4.
of capacitive reactance at this frequency because it's a positive value, 0.01. So that's probably
Real Z 50.24, VSWR 1.01 best match, row 2.
the best we're going to do with this antenna.
448.900, 1.01, column 10. Real Z 50.28, row 3. Imac Z 0.05, row 4.
So you see as we go up in frequency now, the capacitive reactance is increasing. So I'm going to stop looking at this now because if there's one point I want to make in this whole demo is, especially with some of you old timers there, we all used to use manual antenna tuners. And I'm sure everybody could say at one time or another, gee, I tune up my dipole on 75, or I tune up my dipole on 40, and for some reason, I can get a good match with more than one set of settings on the tuner. So maybe, I turn down the inductance a little bit and turn up the capacitance, and I tune around. I get a good match, and then I increase the inductance a little bit, and then lower the capacitance a little bit more, and I get a good match. And you sit there and say to yourself, but really, where is the best place to tune my tuner? Where should it really be for the best performance? This complex sweep really gives you a good idea of what you should do with a manual tuner, especially to tune up your antenna properly. Because when you say, gee, I wonder why my SWR is high on 3910 or something like that on 75 meters, and I know that I cut this dipole for 75. Well, you can look at the complex sweep, and if you see you've got a lot of inductive reactance, now you know that what you really want to do is decrease the inductance on your antenna tuner and maybe add a little capacitance till you get the best match where you can get all of the reactance out of the circuit. Or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe now you look at your complex sweep and 39.10 says you've got like, 5.0 positive imagined impedance. Well, you got way too much capacitive reactance here. You got to get rid of that. So now you get a better idea from the get-go of how to start setting that manual tuner to get it right in the ballpark. And I really think that's incredibly useful information myself. So now these days, a lot of people are using automatic tuners. So you say, well, who cares? Well, for the most part, you're right, because they do a pretty good job most of the time. Most people don't utilize automatic tuners to their fullest extent either, but they do a good job most of the time. But sometimes they act a little squirrely and you don't know why and you don't know what to do about it. Well, some of the more sophisticated ones, like for example, I don't have it anymore, but I used to have an LDG AT1000 Pro. And if you study that manual carefully, it's a rather complex tuner. And if it really doesn't do what it's supposed to do when you think it should, you doing a complex sweep like this can give you an idea what to do with that tuner, because that tuner, you can configure it so that you can change the type of tuning network it's mimicking. You can turn it into an LC network, a Pi-L network, and so forth. There's actually ways, and it'll switch the coils and capacitors around. There's enough relays in there to do that. You can really get to the problem of resolving antenna issues, because sometimes you're really constricted as to what you can do with antennas. Everybody says the resonant antenna is the way to go. Don't waste your time with anything else. Well, not everybody has the property. Not everybody has the support structures to put up the antenna that really needs to be put up. So you got to make work with, you got to make what you have work. And it's things like a nano VNA that can really give you a better handle on how to do that, given the specific antenna you're confined to using. So just in finishing this up, I don't want to drag this on too long, and I know people might have some questions. There are some other tabs in the Nano VNA controller, like administration tab and status tab. You don't even really have to worry about them. The tabs in the browser that you're concerned with are the calibration tab, the simple sweep tab, and the complex sweep tab, and you're good to go. So with that, I'll turn it back to the host, and maybe if anybody has any questions, I'll try my best to answer them. I will say this is not as elaborate and as nice a demo as I wanted to do. Hopefully, if I get my low band antenna fixed in the next couple of months, I will spend some more time and do a nicer demo to where you can see more varied results, so that this makes even more sense to you. And I also hope to get some time to fool around with Nano VNA Saver. And Gina, I can't thank you enough, because I just started to look at that program a couple of days ago, and wow, there's a lot in there, and I'm no engineer by any stretch, so it's way over my head. But one of the things that intrigues me, and one of the things that Bruce McKinnon is working on, although I don't know that it'll come to fruition, is adding time domain reflectometry to the display of in the Nano VNA controller, which I requested that he take a look at doing. And one of the reasons I wanted that is to diagnose exactly what's wrong with my low band antenna. Because if you use time domain reflectometry, you can find out how long your cable is, and you can find out exactly where the break in your cable is, how many feet along, and so forth. So that can be very, very useful. It's not an easy thing to do, and you need a lot of information to provide to the Nano VNA to make it do proper TDR. But man, that can be such a godsend. And there's a lot of other things you can find out with it, return loss and all kinds of stuff. It's so cool. So I'm hoping someday Bruce does get to expose that for us. But in the meantime, Nano VNA Saver does, at least to some extent. And I need to take a serious look at that at some point. So with that, I'll turn it back to the host. And thanks, guys and girls.
Hey, Don. Well, thank you so much. That was an awesome demo. And you know what? It was certainly informative. It was quite clear. It was very easy to follow along. And there's nothing to say that we can't have you back to revisit. Maybe you and Gina could kind of do it together and really, do a presentation. So that would be awesome. So, do we have anybody with questions? If anybody has questions, I guess the thing to do.
I don't raise hand.
Okay, I see some people have raised hands here.
I got one also, Julian. I didn't want to raise my hand.
Okay.
Speak out of turn. Don, how do you think the Nano VNA will work using a remote antenna tuner? So you have a vertical with a remote antenna tuner at the base of the antenna. How do you think that would work?
Well, that's a good question, and that's exactly, I don't have a vertical, but my low band antenna is an oversized 80-meter loop, which is up on the roof about 85 feet above the ground, and it is also fed by about 140 feet of coax, and at the end of that coax on the roof is a remote antenna tuner. And that antenna tuner is attached to about 15 feet of ladder line, which goes up and feeds the loop. So what I would say is, because I haven't, actually I did do some sweeps of my low band antenna a long time ago. And basically what you do, and for sweeps, other than time domain reflectometry, for the sweeps, for example, that I demonstrated here today, you put the tuner, you disable power to the remote tuner, and then it puts it in bypass mode. So you're as connected to the antenna as you're ever going to be. And then you can do your sweeps. Now, for time domain reflectometry, I'm not sure that even that may present some issues and may skew the accuracy a little bit. I'm not sure. I don't have any experience with that yet. But if I ever find out, you'll be the first to know.
Thank you, Don.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Does somebody want to handle the hand raising
Chris had his
counts?
hand up, I think, NE5V.
Okay, so go ahead, NE5V, go ahead.
You need to unmute yourself, Chris.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Or was that NE5L?
Well, that would be me.
Yeah.
Don,
Go ahead, Johnny.
I have a question on when you type in your markers for your sweep. Exactly how do you type that in there? Or is my brain just left me? Do you do like a 0.5 or do you do exactly how do you type the marker in there?
Okay. That is a little bit confusing. So the marker, what Johnny's talking about is how often you want a result in your sweep. So if you put a 1 in that field, you're doing every megacycle, every megahertz. If you put a 0.5 in that field, you're doing every 500 kc. So if you want 100 kc, you put a 0.1 in that field, just 0.1, and then it'll give you every 100 kc. That's what I did when I was sweeping my, which would make sense. Your 75 meter antenna, you really want markers as many as you can get because the SWR is going to change quickly.
Yeah, and I believe those will do 100 markers. Most of them will take up to 100 markers. And also, one more real quick, might come with 2 leads, actual little SMA feed lines. Do you know when you use those and when you do not use those?
Oh, okay. Thank you for reminding me because mine also did. It came with two SMA cables. They both had the same SMAs on each end. I think they are the male SMAs. I always get them mixed up. And mine also came with a barrel connector, so you could join them together if you wanted to. Or I used one of the SMA cables when I did the sweep of this Comet GP3 because my Comet GP3 has a PL259 on it. So I took one of the SMA cables that came with the NANO and screwed it on the little connector on the NANO, and I had an SMA to SO239 adapter and screwed that on the other end of the cable, and then screwed the PL259 into that, and now I could let the NANO see the common antenna up on the roof.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate that, man. Good job.
Now, you might also be able to use those cables if you had a filter that you wanted to check, a bandpass filter, a low pass or a high pass or something. If that filter had SMA connectors on each end, then you would use both of those cables to attach it to the NANO.
All right. If I'm reading the list here correctly, I see Russ has his hands up. Go ahead, Russ.
Hey, Don. Good job. One thing that I wanted to clarify, when you were explaining which SMA connector to use, you said the one on the left. Are you holding the VNA horizontally, or are you holding it like in portrait mode? Because if you hold it in straight up and down like you would an iPhone, I've always used the one on the right. If I use the connector on the left, I get erratic, I get crazy results. So I was wondering if you could clarify that.
Well, I never asked one single-sided person which way to hold the darn thing. I just picked it up and pointed the connectors up in the air with the screen facing me and used the one on the left, and it seemed to work.
I believe they're numbered 0 and 1, and I believe you're right, Don. I believe the one on the left, or the way I hold it, is the other way, where the connector's on the left side of the unit, the little jog wheel is on the top, and that's the way I think it's supposed to be oriented. So I use the one on the bottom.
Right.
I'm not
which
using
would be,
it, but
which would be the left if
which
you
would
hold
be
it.
the left if you
Yeah.
held it upright like an
Right.
iPhone.
Yep. Yeah, and I
Well,
think
according to
that's
my wife, yes, you hold them where they're on the left, and you're from what I've read, you're supposed to use the top connector.
oh well, maybe I should do my sweeps over again.
Does that be the number? Is it they're numbered 0 and 1 though, right, Johnny?
Yeah, that's right. And
in
you're supposed to
Ian's
use
demo-
number 0. But I mean, if it worked with 1, let her roll.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Another comment, though. John was asking about setting the number of points on the sweep. Are there not just 50 slots? So I notice if I used like 0.001, which would be every kilohertz, it would come back and say you've exceeded the number of slots, which I thought was 50. You try it again, so you back off on that number. And the other thing, when you were talking about using the analyzer for inductance and capacitance to tune your, to find the right setting for your tuner, would you not have it connected to the tuner, then to the, through to the antenna? Because it would be a real hassle going back and forth.
Oh no! I would not do that. I would, based on the sweep of the antenna. That's what's important. You're trying to find out what this antenna is doing at a given frequency and what kind of characteristics are being exhibited. So when you see, by virtue of the complex sweep, that you've got a lot of inductive reactance, well, then when you hook that antenna back up to the antenna tuner, you know that you want to introduce as little inductance as possible into the circuit in order to get that antenna to behave. So it gives you a guideline of, like some antenna tuners have a wafer switch that changes taps along the coil and thereby changes the inductance. So now you have a better idea that you might think, well, my antenna is shorter than it's supposed to be. I probably got to add some inductance to this, or maybe I got to add some capacitance to this. But the sweep really tells you what's going on. So if you've got capacitive reactance at that frequency, you want to reduce it. If you've got inductive reactance at that frequency, you want to reduce that. So that gives you at least a basic idea, just like when you tune up an amplifier, it gives you a basic idea of how to get into the general ballpark. And then of course you use the meters, the SWR meters, to get it down flat. Does that help, Russ?
I guess. I think what I'll have to do is just try it and see what happens. I mean, my tuner has air inductors and capacitors, so there's no relays or anything in it. So
no,
it's infinitely variable.
So you have a roller inductor?
No, as I said, I think they're air inductors. They're the ones that have the plates that intermesh with each other as you turn them.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was wondering. It seems like it would be a lot of trial and error to find a different setting.
Well, wait a minute though. You have a knob that you turn for the inductance, and you have a knob you turn for the capacitance, right?
Correct.
So if you know which end of the dial is the least amount of inductance and which is the most, and which end of the dial is the least amount of capacitance and which is the most, doesn't then it give you some guideline of where to start?
Well, yeah. I mean, let's say that the inductance setting or the control is on the left, and you had too much inductance, and turning it counterclockwise reduces, whichever way it reduces it, you still wouldn't know. until you actually connected the, well, you wouldn't know unless you ran it through the VNA.
Yeah,
unless
but
I'm just completely missing.
You don't
the point
need
here.
to. You don't need to know exactly. What you need to know is you already know now you've got to reduce your inductance. So now you know what to do with that tuner. When you get to that tuner, you say, I know maybe I was running this thing last week with my inductance set too high anyway. So let me start. I know I've got to reduce the inductance. Let me start with a low inductance setting, maybe one that I think is lower than it should be. And then try to tune for resonance. And if you get resonance, then you probably have got the right match, because you started out by recognizing there was too much inductance in the first place, because that's what the Nano told you.
Okay. I think what I'm going to have to do, Don, is just actually, try to get my hands on it, and it'll probably make a little bit more sense there. But
yeah, because I don't think you can, I think to introduce the Nano VNA in the circuit with the tuner, I don't know that that would, I don't know that that would do you well. It might be just what the doctor ordered, but I think it's a lot more work and a lot more of a pain in the neck than you need to go through. Because once you've got the basic idea from your complex sweep, you have a reasonable idea of what to do with your tuner, and now your simple power meter with forward and reflective power and SWR is going to tell you, okay, I'm just a little out. Let me just tweak this a little more. And there I am. It's flat. I'm happy.
I got an answer, I think, for his other point, talking about the 50 KC deal. Some Nano VNAs only have 50 points. The more expensive ones go on up to 100 or 200.
You're right.
Okay. Yeah.
And also there are different versions. And I don't even know how you tell what version Nano VNA you have. I think they're up to version 5 now. I don't know if I might even have a 1 or a 2. But the newer versions and the more expensive ones have higher resolution, so you can have more markers.
It also depends on your frequency too. I mean, if you
Yes.
put in 440
Right,
to 430,
right.
you know, you can't have 100 marks, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, mine's about a year and a half old. I bought, I heard about them quite a while ago, so I'm guessing I've got the VNA 0, but
I don't think so, Russ, because I think mine is is older than yours.
okay.
So
Well, mine's, I think it's measured out to, it has like a 3-inch screen on it.
yeah,
And
Left the meeting.
so
yeah. This one has a very tiny little screen.
Yeah. I think the first thing I need to do is I'm going to run another sweep or another calibration with the antenna on the left, holding it upright on the left, just to see it. It seems like I did that once before, and the readings were just out in the weeds someplace. And so I don't know.
Well, who knows? Maybe Sean will have the 0 and the 1 reversed.
It's
God
like
only
Johnson,
knows.
whichever one works.
Yeah.
Okay, Don. Well, let's let somebody else get in and raise their hand and see if they've got a question. Thanks, Don.
You're welcome.
All righty. Well, I don't think I see any other hands raised. So does anybody have a question? If you're not able to get the hand raising thing figured out, go ahead and state your name or your suffix or something like that, and we can try acknowledging you that way.
Somebody just raised their hand, but I missed
Kenny
it.
Lima again. Can y'all say where to get this software and if there's a link or anything?
Blindhams.com.
They have it there.
You go where you always go. Blindhams.com. There you go.
K1BZE.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, BZE.
Yeah, for some reason when I went to more to go raise my hand, I got emojis, and I don't know why. But one of the things I wanted to add well, I say two little things, is what the nano VNA is actually doing for a normal sighted person. It's showing on the screen graphs of the different things that it can measure. But what Bruce's software did for us, it's giving us the data points. So if we put enough markers in there, we can make a picture as we go through the numbers in our mind, or as we read the data points, we can go through the look at the data points and draw the picture in our mind as to what that antenna is really doing.
Yeah, you can see the dips by watching the numbers go down.
Exactly. Or go up in whatever, however your antenna is operating. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I think on the Blind Hams list, I emailed all of the information, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago. So it's also in the emails too.
Yeah, Bruce McKinnon does have a GitHub page. But honestly,
and I put that link all up on it.
Yes.
On the Blind Hams.
Yeah. So if you dig back on Blind Hams, you can find that. And also, they'll always be up on Blind Hams anyway, because, people that have worked with Bruce, usually we're going to know when he comes out with something new. So we'll make sure that Blind Hams knows about it.
Yeah, and Gina has put me in a mail thread with Bruce, and I think he's agreed to do a demo of his software and talk about it. Maybe we'll do a tech Zoom with him, or at least do a roundtable at the least.
Guys, y'all take care. It's been a great meeting. I've got to get out of here, go to work early in the morning. Don, great job, my friend. We'll catch you in the morning.
Thanks, Johnny. Take it easy.
7-3, Johnny. All right. Anybody else with any questions, comments? Again, either raise your hand or throw out your name or your suffix or some way.
One other comment. One other BZE. One other comment.
Yeah, go ahead, BZE.
Bruce does a very good presentation on the Nano VNA because he's got the whole history of it and how it started and all the different things that it can do. And he's got a really nice slide presentation. So that would be a really good thing for a Zoom meeting.
So we're going to get in touch with him and figure out what we can do, and let him know that we probably won't be able to see the slides, but whatever he can do to describe them would be helpful.
Some people will.
Yeah, I guess so.
Definitely. Well, see, the thing is, he has everything in a PDF, so he can probably put the PDF up somewhere where we can get it.
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Before we move on, any other questions, comments?
Terrific, John. Terrific job.
Great job, Don. Great job. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Don.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really a good presentation. Okay, so I guess that the next thing here on the list is where we decide what the next meeting is going to be about. So I think
Gina has a hand raised, Julian.
Oh, go ahead, Gina.
Are you muted, Gina?
There we go. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't. Hard to swipe on an iPhone, isn't it? Oh, right. Thanks, Don. I did learn a lot from it, but from the comments people have made, I would make the point, and I thought I might raise it with Bruce, it's great to be able to plot a number of points, but remember what it's doing on the screen and how you've got to manipulate your screen reader to get that data. It's putting them in columns, so it's going horizontally across the screen. So can you imagine navigating a screen reader across 100 points from column to column to column to column? That's a pretty hard navigation to do, and to focus on trying to picture all that plotting in your mind and navigating like that. It's a pretty hard way to go. I don't know if the table could be reversed and have the data plotted in rows. I don't know if that would be easier, or maybe it may be the same, but I don't know if a browser would struggle because you're going across the screen. So I don't know what other people, more experts in using screen readers, would actually feel about that. But also I've got comments about the nano VNAs. Ian's been telling me that they are all styles and all shapes. So comparing one against another isn't really that helpful. It is port or channel 0. And on the modern one that I've brought, if you lay it on desk, so the screen's facing up, and have the side with the power button and the rocker nudge wheel on the top of it, the left-hand side does have the 2 ports, and it's the top one of those 2. But if you held that like an iPhone with the 2 ports sticking up, that would be on the right-hand side. So I don't think there's any hard and fast rule of how you can actually identify which port to use. Best to really, I guess, use IRA or Be My Eyes to see if they're marked as channel 0, which is really where you want to do your antenna calibrating with. I have done a walkthrough, a suggestion of how to install Nano controller, and Bruce is really enthusiastic to move to add to the app, as Don's already suggested, the different elements that we want to measure, and I think he's going to be adding some. There's issues around the serial port selection. Don, I think I would suggest that everyone looks on the admin tab of Nano controller just to double check that the Nano VNA is on the right port. You can, if you listen to my demo, the DOS window that it opens up when you activate the app usually does display the port where it's found the Nano controller, but you know, it might not. You might not have the right port selected within the app, so you do need to double check that that's configured properly, because you don't want to do a sweep and everything and then find that you're actually not talking to the Nano VNA. In fact, it might be a good idea for me to set that wrong and see what happens and how quick you know that the VNA is not talking to the computer.
But you will know. You will.
Yeah. But it did seem, because when I spoke to Chris, I think it was, he said, he was very concerned about the serial port selection, but it doesn't. I agree with you, Don. It seemed pretty straightforward.
I'll tell you, Gino, when
really.
I plug in my Nano VNA, my computer, and it surprised the heck out of me, but my computer immediately announces Nano VNA or whatever connected on COM4 or whatever. That's even before I run Bruce's software. And then when I run, and then when I run Bruce's software, the controller, it says the same thing. We found COM3, we found COM4, we found COM5, and we found the Nano VNA on COM4. And it's so I that's one of the reasons I said that, because I do a lot of work with USB devices and serial port and parallel port emulators, and I'm amazed at that. I've never seen a device quite do that.
Yeah. Is this version 4 you're running, are you?
The latest controller?
Yes.
I think I'm running the latest, yes. But it's always done that for me, even before he came out with this version.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I think when he first came out with it, I had to set it. But seems like after that, after a while, that wasn't necessary anymore.
Yeah. And in respect of identifying the different calibration caps, the Soul kit, again, it appears that they vary in design too. And hopefully the open one will be have no center pin on the underside. So then that just leaves you the two, the short and the 50 ohm load to distinguish between. And Colin on the Blind Hands list suggested that the 50 ohms one, the top rotates on it. If you hold the body of it around the hexagon part of it, you can rotate the top of the 50 ohm one, whereas the short seems to be just one solid unit. But Ian assures me that that is not so with all of them. So the best way to tell between those two is really just to do a sweep. And if you get realistic results, then you've got the 50 ohm load. If it's 500, 600 to 1, then I think you've got the short on there and you need to swap it.
I could tell the 50. I could tell the 50 K1BZE by weight. It was heavier.
Yeah, and you can also see it's a little bigger.
Yes.
Not necessary, not in every set, apparently. They vary. Different manufacturers are producing them in a different way. So, but I think you're probably right. In my case, yes, the 50 ohm one is heavier than the short, but Ian's set, I believe, he says that the short is the tallest one and the heaviest one.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Exactly. So, yeah. But it's like everything we do within radio, isn't it? It's a bit of trial and error, really.
Gina, are they identified by color for sighted people?
Or are they labeled?
This is something else as well. I watched the YouTube video and the guy says that you can easily identify the short because it's silver, short, S for S. Ian turns around and says, no, the 50 ohm one is silver in my set.
Oh my God. You just can't
win. My tall one.
Don't you just love consistency?
Yeah, my tall one has a spinny cap on the top, like somebody said a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
That's what mine has.
I think that's the load on mine.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what Colin said. Yes. The one with the spinning top is the load. But then, as I say, Ian said to me, well, no, his short even spins as well. Wow. So,
man. Oh, but so buyer beware.
Yeah, that shouldn't discourage anybody from trying it. They're marvelous devices. And I really appreciate Don's explanation of real Z and imaginary Z, because I didn't know it by those terms. And when I think Don heard or when I asked on Blind Hams, what was it? Series L and Series C is exactly the same. Is that right, Don?
Yeah, right. Series L is inductance and Series C is capacitance. And so I would assume from looking briefly at Nano VNA Saver that's the Series L would be imaginary, and or Series L or C would be the imaginary impedance. But it's interesting because the way they show it in Nano VNA Saver, everything is broken out into separate values, which is really the way to do it. In the way it's done in the controller, you have real and imagined impedance. And if the imagined impedance is negative, it's inductive. If it's positive, it's capacitive. But I think in the Saver, you can see the values for both. So I guess if everything is perfect, L is 0 and C is 0. Right. But I don't know that because I haven't played with it enough yet.
Yeah. I mean, I must have done some of this theory and these terms to get my license, but it's been so long time ago. And when you can't sort of, test anything because you haven't got any accessible equipment, then you tend to forget it, don't you? So I'm really enjoying the learning experience because I've always been fascinated. I've always made antennas of some kind, and it's been potluck. But now we've got test equipment that we can use. It's amazing. So I am working on another walkthrough of version 4 of Nano VNA controller at the moment, and the one that I've done for version 3 is pretty good. So I hope everyone who's attended this Zoom call will go and grab and have a listen to that. And as I say, think about, how many, your step size, your plotting points, because, you've got to navigate that horizontally on a table, and build up with a small amount first and then just extend it. Do it in several chunks rather than in one, so that if you're checking the whole of the HF band, that's going to be some task to do it. Obviously do it by band. I would have thought 75 meters you guys use, etc. Anyway, great call, great Zoom call, and I think I'm going to crawl off to bed.
Good morning, Gina.
Dream about dipoles.
Yeah, and I don't know.
No, yard is.
Sometimes that could be a nightmare.
Amen to that.
Yeah, it looks to me like I think we're going to be revisiting this in a future Tech Zoom if Gina and Donald come back and join us again, because boy, there's a wealth of knowledge right there. All right, so
the thing that always got me about the three things that they give you is, what's the sense of putting an open cap on it when you can just test it with no cap at all? It's still an open.
I was going to ask that question. I was a little too embarrassed. Thank you, Angelo.
I mean, there's nothing in that cap.
Yeah, I wonder if it's stray RF or something like that it's trying to shield out. That's the only thing I can think of.
I don't know, but there's got to be something to it, because the bean counters would eliminate that in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, that's a nickel they could have saved.
Exactly.
You got that right.
Yeah, so there's got to be something to it. So I always put it on, but every time I do it, I'm like, why don't I just leave it off? And I just fight morally with myself, and I lose every time and put it on.
But you don't rip the tag off your sheet of your mattress either, do you, Don?
No, I don't, Joel.
Under penalty of law.
Indeed.
Exactly. All right. So before we wrap this up here, at least the formal podcast portion of this. Does anybody else have any questions or brief comment they want to make? All right, hearing none, everybody stand by because we're going to vote for the next month's discussion. But just to wrap up the recorded portion here, thank you all for tuning in and listening to the CQ Blind Hams Tech Zoom. As always, you can go to www.blindhams.com to learn about the Blind Hams Network and avail yourself of many resources that are up on that page. And of course, find CQ Blind Hams on YouTube and CQ Blind Hams on any podcast catcher of your choice. 7-3, and we'll catch you all on the next one.
7-3, everybody.
Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and visit www.blindhams.com.